What were some things that changed in your viewing of the Lorax?
The forest got like completely wiped out.
The forests were destroyed. Excellent answer.
The grass.
The grass. So living organisms died or were wiped out. Good.
There was like no pollution. The ponds were clear, and then they had a bunch of like trash in them.
Yes, we saw the environment go from polluted or from non-polluted to polluted. Excellent.
The expressions of the characters like changed, especially the Lorax, like just
Tell me
as
about the Lorax. How would you describe some of his emotions? Because he went through a wide range of changes.
Angry,
There was
to
anger,
sad,
there was sad,
disappointed.
disappointed. Yep.
I feel like at the beginning he felt like he had a lot of power, and then by the end he was kind of helpless. Like
Yes, he was optimistic at first. He tried to put a good spin. He tried to fight the good fight. I see passion in the chat. Yeah, these are fantastic answers. You guys are nailing this. It looks like you picked up on all the nuance, and I'm not surprised. You're smart young people. So good job. Let's move on. All right. So here's some of the things that you totally mentioned. You did a great job filling out the things that I was looking for. You brought up urbanization. They built roads. They built houses. Awesome. The trees died, right? The truffula trees. Environmental quality you brought up. One of my other favorite parts of the original is when the Onceler says he's just about ready to see what he's done wrong and move along, and then the stock report comes in and he gets all happy again and greedy. And he says, if I didn't do it, someone else would. That is a huge, important line in this program, right? We can be that person who recycles everything and eats vegetarian and bikes to work. But until we get everybody else on board, somebody's going to do the bad stuff we were doing too. And that's a huge theme, I think, that is sometimes overlooked. Okay, so these are things that changed in the Lorax, and I could probably tie most of your answers into one of these categories. What we want to look at today is called systems thinking. Systems thinking. And what you're going to see in tomorrow's notes is that systems thinking is tied to something called feedback, and specifically feedback loops. You've probably heard the word feedback before. If you've ever been around a speaker and it starts squeaking really high, that's a physics phenomenon called feedback. Feedback is when somebody tells you how you're doing, right? I give you a grade, that's your feedback. So it's this circular idea that change is happening. Now, you can have what's called positive feedback, and you can have what is called negative feedback. And we talked the other day about hypotheses and how they have to indicate direction, right? If I put more fertilizer on this plant, then the plant will grow taller. Those are directions. More fertilizer, taller plant. Okay, well, feedback has to operate with directions as well. We're looking for causation, right, in these relationships. So here's one. As the number of trees cut goes up, what happens to the number of truffula trees?
They go down.
They go down. Okay, so you see what kind of relationship that is? That is what we call an indirect relationship in math. One's going up and one is going down. The net here is a loss. We call this a negative feedback in this case, okay? Here's another one. As the number of needs produced goes up, what happens to the number of profits?
It also
They go up as well.
Thank you. Love the participation. They also go up. Okay, so if I connect those two, right, that is a positive relationship. Both go up. If I connect these two, that indicated an indirect or a negative feedback relationship. What's a one-word answer for the Onceler? What is driving him?
Greed.
Greed. Excellent answer. Money, profit, wealth. Yep, we're all on the same page here. Okay, we call this the business loop or the profits loop. Okay, and so he's driven by money. And what I did was I pulled a few of those changes that happen. I pulled them out separate. As the Onceler's greed goes up, what happens to the number of trees cut?
Increases.
It increases as long as there's trees left to cut. So they both went up. All right, what about as the number of trees cut go up, what happens to factory size?
Increase.
It increases, okay? As the factory size goes up, what happens to the number of seeds produced?
It goes up.
Oh, I see a pattern here, right? As the seeds are produced in larger numbers, what happens to profits?
There's
Goes up.
more.
And as he makes more profits, what happens to his greed?
Goes up.
Goes up.
Everything is going up. And the more that this goes up, the more this goes up, the more this goes up. We have a runaway train. We have a chain reaction of positive feedback. So you know what we call this in science and math? We call this exponential growth. You know this concept. We're going to talk about population. Exponential growth is a result of a positive feedback loop. A positive feedback loop leads to exponential growth. Okay, that is the main thing that you need to know from today so far. What drives the Lorax?
Protection of the environment.
Protection of the environment. He is passionate about the environment. So we could go through that list of things that change in the story, and we could create an environment loop. As the Onceler's greed goes up, what happens to trees cut?
It
Goes
increases.
up.
We had this exact same example on the business loop. They both increase. Okay. Now, as the trees get cut, what happens to environmental quality?
Goes
It goes
down.
Uh-oh, we haven't had one of these yet, right? So instead of a plus, I'm going to put, that's a negative feedback impact. Okay. As environmental quality goes down, what happens to the animal population?
It goes down as well.
Okay, they're both going down. Is that a minus or a plus? The plus and the minus have everything to do with direction. If they're both going up, it's a plus. If they're both going down, it's a plus. If one's going up and one's going down, then it's a minus. So this one's actually a plus. Animal population is going down. What happens to Lorax's anger?
It goes up.
Yeah, here we have another minus. And then this one actually changes a couple of ways during the story. But as Lorax's anger goes up, well, eventually that he gets more greedy. Well, watch what happened here. Remember the last one was plus, 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 plus. Here we have plus, minus, plus, minus, plus. We have just created what is called a negative feedback loop. A negative feedback loop is when you have more balance to the system. So not exponential growth. More of an equilibrium. For about 20 minutes of that program, it is a battle back and forth between environment and business. And eventually business ends up winning. Well, kind of. Environment kind of makes a comeback at the end. So in a negative feedback loop, you have factors that cancel each other out. The pluses and minuses work against each other. We're going to see this in real life in something that you know is called predator-prey, right? If the predator kills all the prey, then they will starve to death. So there has to be a balance, and that's where negative feedback loops come into play. Whoever knew the Lorax was so complicated, propaganda filled with systems thinking. Positive feedback loop, runaway train, exponential growth. Negative feedback loop, balance to the system, equilibrium.